"You're too old to matter anymore," my daughter said, quietly, carefully, like she didn't want me to hear it, but deep down, maybe she did. She didn't know I still held the deed to everything they own. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. I used to believe that building something with your hands guaranteed respect. Respect from your neighbors, your community, your children. I believed that until I moved into the guest room of my own house and started asking permission to use the microwave. My name is Raymond Holt. I'm 78 years old. Retired builder. Husband to a woman who passed too soon. Father to one daughter who used to braid my hair on the porch while I sipped coffee. Grandfather to two boys who now greet me with nods and barely look up from their screens. I used to own a construction company, Holt & Sons, even though I never had a son. Started with a pickup truck and a stack of business cards. By the time I was 60, I had built over 24 custom homes across the state, not counting the commercial work. Banks. Schools. City projects. My hands shaped half this county's skyline. But none of that matters now. Not in this house. Here, I'm Dad. Grandpa. The man in the other room. A shadow passing through the hallway with slippers and a cough. I used to be asked for advice. Now I get gently corrected if I try to turn the thermostat above 70. They didn't mean to make me feel small, not at first. My daughter, Ellen, was heartbroken after her mother died. We all were. That first year, she called me every night. "Come live with us, Dad. You shouldn't be alone in that big house." Jim, her husband, agreed. "You'll always have a place with us." And for a while, they meant it. The first 2 months felt warm. Healing. I helped with the kids, fixed what broke, cooked breakfast every Sunday. They even let me cover the property taxes as a thank you gesture. I didn't mind. The pension was solid, and the house was in my name anyway. Then time did what time always does, it wore down the edges of grace. Jim started sighing louder when I left the TV on. Ellen began reminding me to call before using the dryer. The boys stopped asking me to pick them up from school. I didn't complain. I gave space. I adjusted. Because that's what you do when you love people. But slowly, the house I bought became the house I occupied. They never asked me to sign it over, they didn't need to. I'd already done the paperwork years ago, making sure everything would be clean and simple after I passed. Living trusts. Succession planning. It was all set up to avoid probate. What I didn't plan for was how easily a family forgets the weight of your hands once they stop seeing them build. These days, Jim runs his little online sales company from the den I built with my own hammer. Ellen consults on lifestyle blogs while sipping coffee from mugs I paid for. The boys have MacBooks I couldn't afford for myself, but apparently, Grandpa's money still spends just fine, so long as Grandpa doesn't ask questions. They think I don't notice how quiet the room gets when I enter. They think I don't see the glances they exchange when I suggest we all have dinner together instead of eating in shifts like strangers at a train station. And lately, Ellen's been hinting. Dropping little phrases like accessible retirement living and peaceful transitions. The kind of language people use when they're trying to bury you without digging a hole. Last week, she left a brochure on my bed. Folded neatly. No note. The cover said, "It's not a home, it's freedom." Freedom for who, I wonder? I used to be the man who built dreams out of concrete and steel. Now I'm a man whose presence is an inconvenience in a house he paid off before Jim finished his first degree. But here's the part that makes me smile at night when the lights are off and the walls think I'm asleep. They forgot one crucial thing. Despite the attitude, despite the control they think they have over this house, this life, I never signed the final transfer. The deed? Still mine. The bank accounts? Still routed through my name. The lake house they use every summer. Still part of my private trust. They think I'm a burden. But I'm still the man holding the keys. It didn't happen all at once. That's the most dangerous kind of change, the kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that tiptoes in through the back door while everyone's laughing in the front room. It starts with something small. Jim stopped thanking me for things. That was the first shift. It used to be every time I'd fix something around the house, reroute the bathroom tiles, patch the drywall after one of the boys knocked a chair over, replace a filter in the furnace, he'd say, "Thanks, Ray, I appreciate it." Then one day, he just didn't. No big deal. People get busy. But then Ellen started doing the same. She'd call me sweet whenever I made breakfast, like I was a volunteer in a retirement home. I remember once, about 2 years after I moved in, I replaced the weather stripping on all the exterior doors before winter hit. Saved them a fortune in heating that season. When I brought it up casually, just in conversation, Ellen said, "Well, I'm glad you feel useful, Dad." Useful. Like a tool. Not family. Even the boys changed. When I first moved in, I'd take Sam and Theo to school a few times a week. They'd fight over who got to sit in the front seat. We had routines, McDonald's hash browns on Fridays, little trivia games in the car. But as they got older, and phones started living in their hands, I became more of a chauffeur than a grandfather. Now, when I say good morning, I get a grunt or a shrug. If I ask them how school was, I might get one word, fine, if they're feeling generous. One Christmas, I gave Theo a signed baseball I'd had since the 1960s. My brother got it for me when I came home from basic training, Reggie Jackson's rookie season. The kid opened the box, looked at it for 2 seconds, and said, "Is this supposed to be worth money or something?" No thank you. No excitement. Just, expectation. That's what I've become in this house. Expected. But not welcomed. It got worse after the second year. They didn't ask me if I wanted to redecorate the living room, I just came home one day and my recliner was gone. Replaced with a neutral layout from some home design magazine. Jim said, "We figured you wouldn't mind. It's more open now." Ellen added, "You can still watch your shows from the kitchen table if you want." The kitchen table. My table. I built that damn thing in 1985 with white oak I hauled myself from a mill 3 counties over. I carved the legs by hand, back when I still had a full head of hair and Margaret used to laugh every time I cursed a splinter. We raised our daughter at that table. Had our last anniversary dinner there. Now I sit at it alone, 2 feet away from a living room I paid for but am no longer allowed to sit in. And they always couch it in concern. "Dad, are you sure you should be lifting that?" "Dad, you don't need to worry about the taxes this year, we'll handle it." "Dad, you've earned your rest. Just relax." But the things they want me to relax about are always the things that require control. Property taxes. Insurance policies. Inheritance planning. When Ellen brings those things up, she gets this strange, sweet tone, like she's petting a dog that might bite if startled. One time she actually said, "You know, we were thinking it might be safer for all of us if you made us co-signers. Just in case something happens. Just in case." I remember Ellen at 6 years old, wrapping her arms around my leg while I washed the truck. "Don't leave for work today, Daddy. Just stay and play." Now she barely looks up when I enter the room. She used to be so good. So gentle. But time and money do things to people. They soften the spine and harden the heart. Jim never had a spine to begin with. I knew that the first time he came around, wearing expensive shoes and shaking my hand like he was trying to convince me he wasn't scared. Back then, I thought maybe love would shape him into something stronger. But it only made him comfortable. He got used to the house. To the money. To me. He used to call me Mr. Holt. Then it was Ray. Then nothing at all. Now when he walks past me, it's like I'm a lamp that doesn't match the new decor. And Ellen, my own daughter, lets it happen. Last month, I left a light on in the hallway and forgot about it. Jim walked into the kitchen and said, "Can we maybe start turning lights off when we're not using them? Electricity's not free, you know." Electricity. He said that to me. To the man paying the bill. I just smiled. Not because it was funny, because the day's coming when Jim will wish that light was still on. When the things he's taken for granted start turning off, one by one. I kept all the paperwork. Quietly. Carefully. The trust documents. The title records. The account logins. The investment summaries. Even the will. They never asked to see it. They assumed the silence meant surrender. But that silence was strategy. They think I'm sitting quietly in the background because I've accepted my role. What they don't understand, what they'll learn soon, is that old men don't stop being dangerous. We just get quieter about it. It happened on a Thursday. It's always a Thursday when something shifts, quietly, without fanfare, like the earth moving just enough to crack the foundation. I'd just come in from the garage. Rain was starting to fall, and I'd gone out to check on the generator. The boys were upstairs gaming, the dog was snoring on the couch, yes, the one I'm not allowed to sit on, and I had picked up some groceries earlier in the day, half and half, oranges, paper towels, and a jar of fig jam Ellen liked to pretend was a health food. I left the bags by the door and was about to head to my room to change out of my wet shoes when I heard it. Not a yell. Not an argument. Just her voice, clear, flat, surgical, coming from the kitchen. "He's too old to matter anymore." That's what she said. Just like that. Not angrily. Not emotionally. Like a fact. Like reading off a shopping list. I froze in the hallway. One foot still inside my muddy boot. The door to the kitchen was cracked open, the soft yellow light bleeding into the hallway. I could hear the sound of water running and Jim's heavy footsteps pacing slowly across the tile. Ellen spoke again. "Seriously, Jim, what are we waiting for? We've been patient long enough. The man's pushing 80 and still acts like he's in charge of everything." Jim grunted. I know. But it's delicate. It's ridiculous," she snapped. "He still has his name on the lake house. He's still managing the brokerage accounts. The house isn't even ours technically." Another pause. The water turned off. "He said he'd transfer everything years ago," she went on. "It's like he's waiting for some big moment to pass the torch, except he won't. He just hoards everything. You saw how he reacted when we brought up co-signing the property taxes." "He looked hurt," Jim muttered. "Good," she replied. "Maybe he'll get the hint." The air in the hallway tightened. I hadn't moved. I couldn't. My hand was resting on the doorframe, the wood cool under my palm, grounding me. Then came the line that would burn into my bones. "We can't keep living like this, tied to an old man's mood swings. It's time we had control. The sooner we get him into assisted care, the sooner we can restructure everything legally. If we wait too long, we risk him getting worse and doing something erratic with the estate." Jim cleared his throat. "Won't that look aggressive?" Ellen lowered her voice. But I still heard it. Every word. "Jim, by the time he figures it out, we'll already be holding the keys. He won't fight us. He wants peace, not confrontation. That's why he's dangerous. He'll sign anything if it means keeping the family intact." That was it. That was the moment I stopped being dad. Stopped being grandpa. Stopped being anything human to them. I became a barrier. A delay. An obstacle to their lifestyle. I backed away slowly from the door, like a man tiptoeing through a minefield. My boots still wet. My hands shaking, not from age, but from a heat I hadn't felt since I left the job site for good. Anger. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that slams doors or throws things. This was the slow, tight kind. The kind that forms a lump in your throat and a promise behind your eyes. I walked to my room, closed the door, and sat down on the edge of the bed. The TV was still on, low volume, some rerun about cooking in the Andes. I stared at it without seeing anything. "She'll be crying in 5 minutes," I whispered aloud to the empty room. Because it was always the same. Margaret used to say Ellen cried when she crossed her own line. When she knew she'd gone too far and needed to soften the fall. It was her trick as a teenager. Now it was just more polished. Sure enough, exactly 6 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. "Dad?" I didn't answer. The doorknob turned slightly. "You okay?" I looked at the door, not even bothering to stand. "I'm fine." A pause. Then her voice, soft, almost sweet. "Hey, I didn't see your car outside earlier. Did you go for a walk?" I let the silence hang for a moment before responding. "Just stepped out to the garage." Another pause. "Oh. I was just thinking, maybe we could all have dinner together this weekend. Something nice. Maybe ribs on the grill." I looked around my room. At the dresser I'd built. The photos still framed from Margaret's last birthday. The old flannel shirt hanging from the chair. And then I looked at my reflection in the TV screen, an old man, yes. But not blind. Not deaf. Not stupid. "No thanks," I said. Her voice cracked for a second. "Okay, well, let me know if you change your mind." And then she was gone. That night, I opened the closet. There, behind the winter coats, was a black lockbox I hadn't touched since Margaret died. I brought it to the bed, dusted it off, and opened it slowly. Inside, the original deeds. The transfer documents. The trust setup. Copies of the will, 2 versions, one signed, one not. My old Rolodex from the business. A notebook with names and numbers of lawyers, banks, old clients. Some dead. Some still around. And one photo of Ellen, age 6, sitting on my shoulders, holding a flag on Memorial Day. I set the photo aside gently. And pulled the folder of active documents into my lap. It was time to remind my family of something they had conveniently forgotten. I may be old. But I still hold the deed. There's a different kind of silence after betrayal. It doesn't hum or settle. It rings, sharp and hollow, like an empty church after the last hymn's been sung. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was restless or in pain. I'm no stranger to sore hips or old injuries. But this wasn't physical. This was something deeper. A kind of soul fatigue you can't medicate. I sat in the armchair in my bedroom, the same one Margaret and I picked out after she finished chemo. She wanted a soft chair near the window, one where she could sit with a book and pretend the world was still kind. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to move it. Now, I sat in it alone, listening to the faint sound of rain on the window and the occasional creak of the house settling. It used to be our house. Now it just felt like a structure I was allowed to inhabit. In the drawer of the nightstand, under an old deck of cards and Margaret's Bible, I kept a single cassette tape. Labeled in her handwriting, Ray, 40th anniversary. I dug out the small cassette player from the closet, slid the tape in, and pressed play. The sound was scratchy at first. A few seconds of fumbling. Then her voice, warm and clear. "Hey, old man. Happy 40 years. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. I know I probably didn't need to record this, but I wanted you to hear me, really hear me. Because sometimes, in the rush of things, I forget to say it loud enough, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. You gave me safety. You gave me a daughter. You gave me a name to be proud of. There was a pause. I could hear her shift in her seat. If something ever happens to me, if I go before you, I want you to know this: take care of Ellen, but watch her closely. She's got a heart like yours, but she's married to a world that doesn't value people like us. People who fix things. People who build. I felt something tighten in my chest. She'll forget who you are if life makes her too comfortable. So remind her. Gently, if you can. Firmly, if you must. The tape ended with a little laugh. And for heaven's sake, stop eating gas station hot dogs. Love you forever. Click. I sat there for a long time, letting her voice hang in the air like smoke. I remembered the first time I met her, at a diner in Amarillo. She was working the counter. I was just a roofer with drywall dust in my hair and a second-hand pickup that wouldn't start in the cold. She called me, sir, in a way that made it sound like a dare. I asked her to dinner 3 times before she said yes. We built everything together from the ground up: our business, our home, our daughter. She handled the books, the quotes, the phone calls. I handled the grit. We were a machine. When we lost our second child, she held me tighter than I thought a human could. And when cancer came for her, she faced it like she faced everything, with fire in her eyes and grace in her bones. Margaret had one rule in life. You don't let people borrow your time if they treat your presence like a favor. I should have listened to her sooner. On the far wall, next to the bookshelf, was a framed photo of our 45th anniversary. We were at the lake house. Ellen and the boys were there. Jim too. Back then, we still laughed together. Margaret was in a blue dress. The one she said made her look like a storm rolling in from the sea. She had that smile in the picture, the one that told you she was watching everything, even when she didn't say a word. I whispered toward the frame. You were right. She forgot. And now I have to remind her. Not with shouting. Not with guilt. But with something she would understand. Loss. Not of love, but of comfort. Of security. Of inherited assumptions. Margaret always said, a house without memory is just drywall and dust. Ellen and Jim were about to learn what that meant. Because I wasn't going anywhere. And I wasn't done building. The following evening, Ellen invited me to dinner. Not out of guilt, don't mistake it. It was strategy. A performance. Damage control. She'd probably spent the whole day crafting a script that would paint her as the loving daughter, just in case I'd overheard something I wasn't meant to. Dad, she said, poking her head into my room like a nurse checking on a patient. We're grilling steaks tonight. Thought we'd do it together. Like old times. Like old times. That phrase hit me harder than any insult could. She knew damn well there were no old times anymore. Still, I said, sounds nice. Because this was the final confirmation I needed, the last box to check before I started dismantling everything they thought was theirs. Dinner was served on the back patio. Jim was manning the grill like a man who thought smoke and tongs made him an alpha. Ellen sat with a glass of rose and that fake smile she wore whenever guests came over. The boys were both buried in their phones, earbuds in, only half aware they were seated at a table. I took my usual seat. Not at the head, Jim claimed that months ago. I sat at the corner, close to the sliding glass door, like a guest in the house I'd bought. Dad, I hope you're hungry, Ellen said cheerfully, pouring me a glass of water like a nurse in a retirement ward. Jim marinated the steaks all afternoon. That's right, Jim chimed in, grinning like he'd just split the atom. Got a new recipe online. Bourbon glaze. Sounds expensive, I said flatly. He chuckled. Don't worry, Ray. We've got it covered. I nodded, not mentioning the $300 I'd Venmoed Ellen 2 days ago when she said they were tight this month. Ellen raised her glass. To family. Everyone raised their drinks. I raised my water. And as the kids resumed tapping away, Jim started in. So. I was talking to a friend of mine, he's a financial advisor, and we got on the subject of, estate stuff. Here it comes. Just thinking ahead, he added quickly, slicing into his steak with overconfidence. You know how crazy probate can be these days. Ellen jumped in. We thought maybe it's time we revisit the whole trust situation. Just to make sure things are clear and updated. So the boys don't have to deal with chaos later. Chaos. That's what they called the legal process of me still being alive. Jim continued, casually. We'd be happy to take on more of the management stuff, property taxes, maintenance, insurance paperwork. Free you up. Free me up? I asked quietly. He nodded. So you can relax. You've earned it. I took a bite of steak. Chewed slowly. Swallowed. I said, this tastes like it came out of a plastic bottle. Jim laughed, but it sounded forced. It's a bourbon glaze. Tastes like something you found at a gas station, I replied. Ellen blinked. Dad. I set my fork down, calmly. You said you wanted to help with the trust. Ellen smiled, cautiously. Only if you're ready. You want to take over the paperwork. The property. The accounts. Manage it on my behalf. Out of love. Right? Jim nodded. Exactly. I leaned back. And what do I get in return? The table fell silent. Ellen cleared her throat. Well, peace of mind. Less to worry about. You'd be doing less, Jim added. Which at your age is kind of the goal, right? I looked at the boys. Neither had looked up once. Then back to Jim. Then to Ellen. You know what I want in return? Ellen's smile wavered. What's that? Respect. The word hung in the air like smoke from a ruined fire. I want a seat at the table I paid for, I continued. I want to be heard without being managed. I want the thermostat to stay where I set it. I want my recliner back. Jim smirked. Come on, Ray. I want my name to mean something in this house, I snapped, suddenly louder than I'd planned. I gave you everything. My time. My money. My home. I buried your mother, buried my friends, buried parts of myself just so you'd have a life worth living, and now I sit in the corner like a misplaced lamp while you plan how to bury me alive. Ellen's face flushed. That's not fair. No. I stood up slowly. Let me tell you what's not fair. Fair is not being told when I can use my own bathroom. Fair is not getting scolded like a child for leaving the light on. Fair is not being invited to dinner so you can soft pitch a financial coup like I'm some doddering fool with a leaky brain. Jim was turning red now. We were just trying to help. I stepped closer to him, steady, calm. You want to help? Start by remembering whose name is still on every deed in this household. Start by remembering I'm not dead yet. I turned to Ellen. And you, don't you dare toast to the family while plotting my extinction over medium-rare steak. Her eyes shimmered with anger and embarrassment. Fine, she said, voice cracking. If you want to keep controlling everything, do it. Just don't expect us to keep holding your hand. I nodded. There it is. I stepped back from the table. Picked up my plate. You can have your dinner, I said, walking toward the door. I've lost my appetite. Later that night, I heard them fighting behind closed doors. Jim's voice. Ellen's voice. Anger. Whispers. Stress. Good. Let them stew. Let them wonder what's coming. Because tonight was the last time I ever sat at that table. From now on, I wasn't the old man in the corner. I was the storm outside their window. And tomorrow morning, I'd start moving the pieces. I woke early the next morning. Before the sun, before the dog started pacing, before the boys began their usual digital trance. There's something sacred about 5 a.m. silence. It's the time men like me get our clearest thoughts. The world's still asleep. No noise. No pretense. Just truth. I made coffee, black, strong, the way Margaret used to brew it. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark, staring at the stack of manila folders I'd pulled from the lockbox. My life, in print. Titles. Transfers. Contracts. Bank summaries. They'd been so confident last night. So casual in their cruelty. But this wasn't rage anymore. This was discipline. I opened a legal pad. Drew 3 columns, assets, control, leverage. Then I began writing. By 8:30 a.m. I was on the phone with Daryl, my old attorney. He picked up with his usual gruff cheer. Raymond Holt. Still alive, huh? Alive and sharper than ever, I replied. You still handling property and trusts? Of course. What do you need? I paused. A clean separation. No drama. But I want everything moved out of their reach. Daryl didn't ask who they were. He knew me too well. You want to revoke access? Every access point, I said. Starting with the house. He exhaled. We'll need a paper trail. I'll draw up the revised trust paperwork and freeze any beneficiary language tied to them. As long as the current deed's still in your name, we're golden. It is. And the lake house? Also mine. Fully. Never transferred it. You really are a cautious bastard, Ray, he chuckled. I'll start on it today. You coming in? I looked out the window. Ellen's car was gone, likely Pilates or brunch with women who pretend their lives are chaotic. I'll be there in an hour. Before I left, I passed the boys in the living room. Both had headphones on. Blank faces lit by screens. Their mother's attitude. Their father's spine. Good morning, I said. Sam grunted. Theo didn't respond. Anything you need from me today? I asked. Sam finally looked up. You still picking up the dry cleaning? I nodded. Already done. He gave a single thumbs up without looking away from his phone. They were 15 and 17. Old enough to know what respect looked like. But they'd never been made to show it. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just Ellen and Jim. This entire branch of the family tree had rotted from the root up. At the law office, Daryl had everything ready. 2 hours of signatures. Revisions. Title transfers. Trust updates. Contingencies. Every asset except my personal savings was placed into a protective trust, set up under a new structure. My new beneficiary. Not Ellen. Not Jim. Instead, I named a veteran scholarship fund I used to donate to in Margaret's honor. Ray, Daryl said, reading the final clause aloud, you're effectively cutting them off unless you reinstate the previous language. Good, I said. And I want that clause locked. Permanently. Even I shouldn't be able to change it unless I appear in person. He raised an eyebrow. You think they'll try something? I stared out the window. I know they will. I came home around 1 p.m. The house was quiet. Jim must have been working, and Ellen was likely out again. But the dog barked the moment I opened the door. She's the only creature in the house that still lights up when I come in. That's when I saw Ellen standing at the kitchen sink. Back turned. Rigid. She hadn't heard me come in. Her phone was pressed to her shoulder. I don't care if it's aggressive, she was saying. He's clearly not himself. He exploded at dinner last night over nothing. I think he's confused. Maybe dementia. He's acting irrational, paranoid. Can you call the elder care consultant today? My jaw tightened. She paused. No, we haven't started paperwork yet. I'm trying to be gentle. Another pause. She laughed. Yeah. He still thinks he's in charge. It's honestly kind of sad. My keys clinked as I set them on the counter. She turned, startled, pale. Dad. I didn't hear you come in. I noticed. I looked at her phone. You might want to finish that call. Sounds important. Her smile faltered. Oh, it was just Mary. From the PTA. Sure. She tucked her phone away, moving toward the fridge like nothing had happened. You've been out all morning. Lawyer's office. That made her freeze for just a breath. Oh. Everything okay? Better than ever, I said. She forced a smile. Good. That's good. I gave her the same gentle smile I'd used for years. The one she thought meant I was harmless. Tell Jim I'll have a few documents for him to look at next week. He'll want to be informed. And with that, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there, smiling and blinking like a woman who just realized the floor had shifted beneath her. The first thread I pulled was small. Unnoticeable to most. But like any good builder knows, when you want to bring down a house, you don't kick in the walls, you loosen the bolts no one sees. That Monday morning, I canceled the automatic payments on the home's property taxes. The account was still in my name. The bills still came to me. Ellen and Jim never questioned it, never once asked how it was all being handled. They just assumed the house ran. Like heat. Like water. Like me. Next, I shut down the secondary credit card Jim used to float his business expenses. The one tied to my account, which I'd added him to years ago, just in case. I even paid the balance off before I killed it. Let him start clean. It would take 3 days to hit. Then I froze the utility autopay and reverted all mail to a P.O. box I'd rented 2 towns over. Piece by piece. Quietly. Legally. Clean. On Tuesday, Ellen noticed the mailbox was emptier than usual. Dad, she said over dinner, have you seen the gas bill? Nope. She blinked. It always comes on Tuesdays. I sipped my water. Jim looked up from his phone. Didn't we get that digitally? Ellen frowned. No, we never switched it. Dad handles all that, remember? Jim shrugged. Maybe you should, I said. Handle it. Ellen laughed nervously. Well, sure. If it makes things easier for you. Oh, I don't mind, I replied. I've got all the account details saved in the safe. Right, she said quickly. Of course. That night, I could hear them whispering in their room again. Voices low, tight, anxious. The cracks were starting to show. By Thursday, the first real tremor hit. Jim's card got declined at his gym. He tried to brush it off, blame the terminal. But later that night, I heard him on the phone with the bank, muttering, pacing, then finally exploding. What do you mean the account was closed? I'm an authorized user. Ellen cornered me the next morning. Dad, is everything okay? With your finances? I looked up from the newspaper. Perfectly fine. She hesitated. Jim's card got declined. Then maybe Jim needs his own card, I said. She paused, jaw twitching. Okay. I just want to make sure you're not confused. You've had a lot on your plate. I folded the paper slowly. Ellen. What exactly do you think I'm confused about? Her lips parted. Closed. She stepped back. I'm just trying to help. Help is what you offer before the damage. Not after. Later that day, I emailed my attorney again. I had one more move in mind. A big one. The lake house. They used it every summer like it was their inherited right. Memorial Day. 4th of July. End of summer trips. They never invited me. They just texted me after they'd already left. Hey, we're heading to the lake for the weekend. You need anything before we go? I hadn't stepped foot there in 5 years. The deed was still mine. The land. The dock. The boathouse. All of it untouched by their greedy fingers. Until now. On Friday afternoon, I changed the locks. Hired a locksmith from a nearby town. Drove down early, beat them to it. Swapped the entry codes. Left a simple sign on the front porch. Private property, entry requires permission of owner. I didn't even sign it. Let them guess. Saturday morning, I heard the fireworks. Not from the lake, but from the kitchen. Ellen came storming into my room. You changed the locks. I folded my laundry with deliberate calm. You go down there this weekend? Yes, she spat. With the boys. And you didn't tell me. Her face turned crimson. We always go this weekend. No, I said. You take. There's a difference. Jim was behind her now, face tight with rage but not brave enough to speak. You're being petty, Ellen said. You're punishing us for something you think we said. I turned to face her. I don't think you said anything. A pause. I heard you. The words froze her mid-step. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stepped forward, voice level. I was in the hallway. With the groceries. When you said I was too old to matter. When you talked about power of attorney. When you laughed about how easily I'd sign away everything I've built. Her eyes dropped. No denial. No defense. Just silence. You made your position clear, I said. Now it's time I make mine. She stepped back, trembling. I didn't mean. Stop. Her mouth snapped shut. I looked at Jim. He flinched. I'll be out of your way soon enough. But while I'm here, remember this, there are two kinds of storms in this world, the ones you run from, and the ones that move your house off its foundation. Then I walked past them, through the kitchen, and out into the garden. The air was still. But the house behind me, it was just beginning to shake. 2 days passed before they confronted me again. Long enough for them to simmer. Not long enough to calm down. It was early evening when I came in from pruning the back garden. Ellen was at the kitchen table, arms crossed, lips tight. Jim stood by the fridge, pacing, fidgeting. Even the boys were there this time, dragged in for effect. Sam had earbuds in. Theo was texting. Dad, Ellen said flatly. We need to talk. I hung up my coat. That's rare. She ignored the jab. It's about the house. The lake house. The trust. All of it. I poured myself a glass of water. Took a sip. Go on. She stood up, slowly, like a lawyer in a courtroom. We looked into it. Jim called the county. Checked the trust registration. The revisions went through. Correct. You removed us, she said, almost whispering. As beneficiaries. I nodded. Also correct. You put it all in some scholarship fund. Veterans. In your mother's name. Her face twisted. That money was meant for us. Jim spoke next, his voice rising. You can't seriously think this is okay. You're cutting your family off, for what? Because we wanted to help manage things. Because we asked about your will. I stared at him. You didn't ask, I said. You plotted. You mocked. You assumed. We were being practical. Ellen exploded. You're old, Dad. You act like you're invincible, but you're pushing 80 and still pretending this is the 1980s. We were trying to protect your legacy. No, I said. You were trying to reassign it. Silence. Ellen's voice trembled. You don't get it, do you? Jim and I need that money. The boys' college fund is empty. Jim's startup hasn't hit profit in a year. We're behind on taxes. Behind on the car. We've been floating all of it because we thought we'd have the security you promised us. I took a step forward, calm and cold. I never promised you anything. Jim scoffed. You lived in our home. I let out a short laugh. My home. I paid the mortgage. I paid the taxes. I paid for the groceries, the cars, the heating. You lived in my home and treated me like a stray mutt on a leash. We fed you. Jim yelled. The room went dead silent. Even the boys looked up. We fed you, I repeated, slowly. He backpedaled. I didn't mean. You did. Ellen stepped in. Dad, just, please. This doesn't have to be messy. Just undo the changes. We can go back. We can fix this. You can't fix what you never built, I said. Sam looked up, rolling his eyes. This is dumb. I turned to him. You know what's dumb? A teenager who doesn't know the value of the roof over his head because he's never had to earn it. You want college money? Try earning a GPA worth investing in. You want a car? Mow some lawns. Sam scoffed and looked at his mother. Why's he even still here? Ellen said nothing. Theo mumbled, he's just doing this to punish us. I nodded. You're absolutely right. They all stared at me. This is punishment, I said. For years of passive cruelty. For letting me become invisible. For whispering behind my back and pretending I didn't hear it. For sitting me at the corner of the table like a relic while you passed judgment and carved up my life like a holiday roast. Jim stepped forward, jaw clenched. You think we're monsters? I looked at him, not blinking. I think you're parasites. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. And you're out. He paused. What? You and Ellen. Out of the house. I've already filed the notice with the county. You've got 60 days to vacate. Ellen paled. You can't, this is our home. It was never yours, I said. Not legally. Not spiritually. And not anymore. Jim lost it. You bitter, selfish old man. I stepped closer, eyes locked on his. You ungrateful boy. You've spent the last decade feeding off a man you secretly despise. But here's your problem, Jim, you mistook my silence for weakness. And you mistook your comfort for entitlement. Theo stood up. Where are we supposed to go? I looked at him. Really looked. A child raised by entitlement. A child who might still have a chance to grow into something real. That's your mother's job, I said softly. Not mine. Ellen broke. Tears welled up, angry ones. You're going to die alone, you know that. No one's going to be there. No one will care. You'll sit in that big, cold house with your money and your principles and not a single soul will give a damn. I nodded, calmly. Maybe. But at least I'll be able to look in the mirror without shame. I picked up my coat and headed for the front door. Where are you going? Jim asked bitterly. To the lake house, I said. My name's still on the title. Then I stopped at the door, turned back once more. I gave you everything. And you gave me nothing but proof that I was right to take it back. Then I walked out. And this time, I didn't look back. Chapter 9, The House I Kept. The lake house was quieter than I remembered. The kind of quiet that wraps around your ribs and makes you breathe deeper. I spent the first few days cleaning. Not because it was messy, it wasn't, but because the act of doing was grounding. I scrubbed counters. Washed linens. Fixed a loose hinge on the dock ladder. The air smelled like pine and old wood. The lake shimmered each morning like it was whispering secrets. This was mine again. Fully. No arguing voices. No clinking wine glasses and forced laughter. No judgments wrapped in smiles. Just my coffee. My hands. My memories. And for the first time in years, my dignity. 3 weeks passed. The formal eviction notice landed. I never heard directly from Ellen or Jim, though I heard through Daryl that they tried, unsuccessfully, to contest the property trust. The court upheld every clause. By the end of the second month, they were gone. Out of the house. No forwarding address given. I assumed they moved in with one of Jim's friends or maybe rented something modest. For once, they'd have to live within their means. That wasn't my concern anymore. But on the 83rd day, yes, I counted, there was a knock at the lake house door. 2 knocks. Hesitant. No anger in them. I opened it to find Theo and Sam standing on the porch. Alone. Sam looked down, awkward. Theo held something in his hands, a baseball. Faded. Familiar. The one I gave him. I think this belongs to you, he said, holding it out. I took it slowly. Nodded. It does. They stood there, unsure of what to say. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. We didn't know. I figured, I replied. Theo looked up. They lied about a lot. They made it sound like you were mean. Selfish. Controlling. And now? He shrugged. Now we think they just wanted your stuff. Sam stepped forward. We weren't fair to you. We were, kids. But we were disrespectful. Rude. And we let it happen. I let the silence sit for a while. Let them feel it. Then I stepped aside and opened the door. Come in. I've got pie. They stayed for a few hours. We didn't talk about Jim. Or Ellen. Not really. They asked about their grandmother. About my business. About how I built the lake house with my own 2 hands, over a single summer, with nothing but blueprints and blisters. They listened. For once, they listened. And as they left, I put a hand on Theo's shoulder. Being sorry is easy, I said. Being better is harder. He nodded. Sam looked at me, face serious. Do we still have a chance? You do, I said. But you'll have to earn it. They didn't argue. Didn't flinch. They just nodded and walked to their car. That night, I sat by the fireplace. The photo of Margaret rested on the mantel, next to a tiny carved figure of a hawk she once gave me on our anniversary. She used to say, the hawk sees all, even what it wishes it didn't. I looked into the flames. I think they'll be okay, I told her. Then I leaned back in my chair, wrapped in the silence I had fought for, and closed my eyes.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.